Do you want a job in 2025? Hey everyone, it's Wolfgang. This is about job seeking. Some of us are doing that right now. The job market is not in perfect shape, but it's not in horrific shape either. I want to give some guidance about how to set about finding a position, the best places to look, and why things are improving for U.S. residents. Starting with online job services. I discovered that Google Jobs has a pretty good response rate, about 9.3% compared to LinkedIn, 3.3% response rate. So Google Jobs, a little bit better by a factor of 3 on the response. So that's something to keep in mind. Although it is worthwhile investing time, like on LinkedIn and in other online sites, it's worth it to invest time in establishing an online professional career reputation. A lot of people do that on LinkedIn. That's kind of the go-to choice for that reason. Keep in mind the response rate, though. When it really comes down to looking for your next job, Google Jobs may be a better or a faster choice. But the coverage, the breadth you get with LinkedIn, you can't deny that, right? Okay, some facts on the ground for job seekers. This is good news. 7.4 million job openings as of July 2025. Just a few, a little over a week ago was July. 7.4 million job openings. That's a lot of people who are needed. So there are some hot sectors. Healthcare, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, the trades. The trades includes plumbing, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, HVAC, electrical workers, wind and solar energy. And of these jobs, these hot sectors, about 8% are hybrid or remote only type of jobs. These are not the only jobs that are open right now. This is a lot of jobs, 7.4 million, a lot of jobs. These are the hottest sectors that are hiring right now. So it's taking a median amount of time of 69 days to get to the first job offer. That's a little bit longer than it took when there was a shortage of workers. That's when companies were thinking they were going to run out of workers, so they sort of overhired in response to the opening up of the economy after COVID. All right, so companies and industries that are hiring. So this is above and beyond those hot sectors. Okay, technology. There are parts of technology that are growing. Banking, financial services, healthcare, which I mentioned, construction, and professional services. So professional services would include things like consulting, business consulting, accounting, bookkeeping, that sort of professional services. So what about this expected economic boom? So there was an expectation when this new presidential administration came into office that we would have an economic boom. And that sort of, it is based on the experience in the U.S. back in the period of 2016 through 2020. There was an expected economic boom. There's two things. First, we're only a few months into the new administration. So we had high expectations based on what happened before. It's probably unrealistic to expect things to change on a dime all at once. So the economic boom may still be in the works. The other thing is, interest rates in the first administration of this particular president, 2016 to 2020, interest rates were low, very low. We were still in zero interest rate policy of the Fed. The Fed was keeping both short-term rates and long-term rates low. So it was easier to buy a house. It was easier to get a mortgage to buy a home in those days. So that sort of colored people's memory about that particular time, 2016 to 2020, how easy things seemed to be economically. A lot of that had to do with very low interest rates, short-term and long-term interest rates. So the Fed is no longer trying to achieve those same goals. Very low short-term rates, very low long-term rates. That's in the past. The Federal Reserve has moved on from that. So the expected economic boom, it's sort of in the works, but it's more realistic to think that we're going to get back to a more normal sort of economy. Instead of a boom, an economic boom period, we may just be getting back to a normal, slow and up to the right sort of period instead of a boom. I might be wrong. Okay, some people think that there's going to be, an explosion in people's wealth. like there was in 2016 to 2020. I'll believe it when I see it. I would be okay with trending back towards a normal economy. And so would a lot of other people at this point. I'm trying to give folks the idea that there are jobs out there, and 7.4 million job openings. This is a lot of openings, right? There's a lot of opportunity out there. So you might have to adjust your expectations and your mindset. U.S. workers are now replacing the borrowed workers we had in the country. We had a bunch of workers who came from outside the U.S. They were sort of borrowed workers, what we call, borrowed workers. A lot of them have left. So U.S. workers will now be replacing them. So that will be good for the U.S. workforce. In terms of hiring, these 7.4 million jobs, mostly those are going to go to U.S. citizens. So that will be a change. That's one plus. That's one thing to look forward to. The GDP, the growth in the U.S. economy, surprised everyone recently, reaching 3% growth. That doesn't sound like much, but the expectation was only 2.3%. And it was like 1.6 or 7% prior to that. So we've really come a long way with GDP growth. So we are seeing some growth. So this economic boom, maybe we're starting to see a piece of it. So one of the most important things that both individuals and companies need right now is solid employment data. Reliable employment data. It's very hard for companies to plan when they keep hearing that the labor force is very healthy and everybody's got a job and anyone who wants to find a job can find a job. That's what companies have been hearing for a long time until, this most recent labor report was a shock to the system. It resulted in a change at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So companies need to know what the accurate picture is for hiring. Are people unemployed? Are people fully employed? Are there people available for jobs? Are we going to have to pay an arm and a leg to hire people? The answer is probably not. This is probably more like a normal hiring situation instead of the sort of frantic hiring that happened after the end of COVID, when companies thought there wouldn't be enough workers and they overhired. So when solid employment data is available, it will help companies and citizens better prepare and understand what they're facing in the labor force. That's something I'm trying to do here. There's a lot of job openings in the U.S. There are several hot sectors, and U.S. workers are in demand. More in demand now than they have been for a while. Okay, one of the hottest areas, data centers. It's a bright spot in the economy. Data centers are taking off. If there's going to be an economic boom, maybe it starts with data centers. There's 3,948 data centers already in the U.S. So they're all over the country. They're concentrated in Northern Virginia, in Phoenix, Arizona, Dallas, Texas, in Atlanta, Georgia. I sort of ran out of room there. Let's see here. Atlanta, Georgia. A lot of sites on the West Coast. I saw sites in California, Oregon, and Washington, in Illinois. If you look up data centers, if you're looking for a job and you think you might have some relevant experience, look up data center in the area where you currently reside. Chances are there's a data center there. There's a lot of them, 3,900, almost 4,000 data centers. Probably there will be 4,000 data centers. That's only another 52 locations within a few months. They're really taking off. The reason is artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, technology, information technology is really taking off in the U.S. The U.S. leads the world in artificial intelligence by a mile. China has, they have a seat at the table, I guess. But the U.S. by far leads artificial intelligence. Cybersecurity is big, but the trades jobs are really hiring. There's a lot of opportunity there in trades jobs. Data centers have need for tradespeople, right? Especially plumbing, HVAC, and electrical. Those sorts of jobs are going to be in demand. So look up in the area where you're located, look up and find a data center or two. You can most likely find job openings at those data centers. So I wanted to give everyone some encouragement about the job situation. There's been, there was this expected economic boom, and people thought surely by now it would be here, right? After all, it's been 6 months since the new government has been in place. 6 months should be enough time. Maybe not. Maybe there's just still too much going on with the, with U.S. workers replacing sort of borrowed workers, workers who came from outside the area. I think it's important to be a little patient and to expect good things, especially with the Bureau of Labor Statistics creating solid, job data. Expect that going forward, and expect a lowering of interest rates. Probably a significant drop in interest rates this year, because people realize now that the job market data was inaccurate, and that's why there's now this change that's happening at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So if you have any questions, my intention was to give people some hope. There's a lot of job openings, right? So if you have any questions, please reach out. Ask any questions you have in the comments. I'd be happy to try and answer them. And I really want to thank everyone for watching, and have a great day.